You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the columnist Carol Malone and the editor of the Courier in Dundee, David Clegg. They'll be with us from now up until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, the Eye says Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab is refusing to resign over allegations of bullying, which he's always denied. The Guardian describes Mr Raab as fighting for his political life, while The Times says he's standing firm while the Prime Minister considers the report into the bullying claims. The Mirror reports that Thomas Cashman, the man who was convicted of murdering 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Korbel, is to appeal his 42-year jail sentence. The Metro has news of the SpaceX rocket launch, which didn't go entirely to plan. Referring to the company's boss, they say, "Elon, we have a problem." The Mail reports unelected members of the House of Lords are planning to block the government's new bill to stop judges halting migrant deportations. The Express says MPs want to know why the BBC reportedly ignored their call to protect women's rights in its coverage of transgender issues. The Financial Times carries quotes from the head of the US Federal Reserve on the importance of trying to maintain economic links with China. The Sun leads with the funeral today of television presenter and dog lover Paul O'Grady. And the Star does almost exactly the same. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Carol Malone and David Clegg. Welcome to both of you. Let's start with The Guardian and the story that it is carrying through the night. We thought we might have some sort of a resolution on it today, but this is Dominic Raab's fight for his political life. Carol?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the case. I mean, Dominic Raab has seen the report, and he always said that if the report upheld the charges of bullying, he would resign. Now, he hasn't resigned, so that says something to me. He is saying he doesn't believe that those charges are being upheld, and the report itself does not say he's broken the ministerial code. I've always been suspicious of this inquiry. We can't be throwing ministers to the wolves on the say-so of civil servants who actually hate the Tories and who are very partisan. And I think, these people think they run the country, and many of them have been saying today that they'll resign if Raab doesn't resign or doesn't get fired. Well, let them resign. If the report doesn't say he is guilty of bullying, well, then why on earth would he resign? I mean,
so, Carol, do you think that they've not had any case to bring to Mr Raab? Then is that what you're saying, that their claims are spurious?
What we know and what has been put in the public domain is claims from anonymous civil servants, people in Whitehall, former ministers in Whitehall, anonymously saying what a bully he was. Now, let me tell you just some of the claims. One former civil servant, senior civil servant, called him a monster, and this was his explanation of how Raab was a monster. He said, I saw him seething and hard staring at you, cold fury, that is it. Well, is that bullying? I don't think it is. And one of the claims that was made was that he threw tomatoes at someone in a meeting. Now, when you drill down into that story, I think it was the Metro ran that story. When you drill down into that story, he didn't throw them at anybody. He took them out of his salad and threw them onto a piece of paper on the table. So everything that I've heard, and all these civil servants who are briefing, which is, they're not supposed to do that, they're all briefing anonymously. If I could see something from someone who went on the record and said this is what he did, I might believe it. But anonymous claims, I don't believe. The only person who's ever gone on the record is Gina Miller, and she said that he bullied her. Her thing was, she says he bullied and demeaned me. And apparently what he said to her was that she was naive. Well, I don't call that bullying either. You know, a lot of ministers are sticking up for Rob and saying, you know, he's a man who has exacting standards. You know, when he wants something done, he wants it done in the way he says. And if people aren't doing their job properly, he has a right to be angry and he has a right to say so. So I would like to know what is in this report. And that's for Labour and the Lib Dems accusing Rishi of dithering. He's not dithering. The report only came out this afternoon. He's gone home. He's going to sleep on it. It's quite the right thing and the rational thing to do.
David, your view, because it has been a long time in coming. It's five months this inquiry's been going on, and we were expecting some sort of decision from the Prime Minister today. Is he dithering?
He's certainly taken his time, and his motivation for that worries me. I think I disagree with quite a lot of what Carol said there, and I think we should be careful to be accurate that what the report is not drawing a conclusion on whether Dominic Raab broke the ministerial code, which says there should be zero tolerance of bullying. That's a problem with the process, I think, rather than a suggestion that this report is, by its nature, vindicating him. It's deliberately not drawing a conclusion. It's gathering the facts and then presenting them to the Prime Minister, who is the person who has then got to decide whether the ministerial code has been broken. And I don't know whether Dominic Raab was bullying civil servants any more than Carol does. What I do know is that I wrote a book about Alex Salmond and his dealings with the civil service, which left something to be desired quite often. And what I found when I spoke to a lot of civil servants around that was that these are very robust people. They are used to behaviours that in normal workplaces wouldn't be acceptable. It takes quite a lot for them to be concerned about the behaviour. They're willing to put up with quite a bit, realising that they're working in a high-pressured, extreme, high-functioning environment. So whenever civil servants come forward and make claims like this, I think they should be taken seriously. And they are in a position that it's actually, there's less protection for them sometimes than there is in other occupations. The fact that the Prime Minister is then the person who adjudicates on whether someone who is a political ally and colleague of his, whether their standards have fallen short, I think that is actually a structural problem with the system, which could do with being looked at. It feels to me like there needs to be some independent verification or scrutiny on whether the ministerial code has been broken, and it shouldn't just be the facts are gathered, put in a report, and then the Prime Minister can sleep on it and decide that, because we know that there is a lot, especially with the problems that Rishi Sunak has in keeping the Conservative Party together. There's a lot of speculation in the press that part of his hesitation here is that he feels like there's after a period of pretty intense civil war amongst the Conservative Party, that there's an uneasy peace has been brokered in some way, and he's reluctant to get back into more problems. So I think we need to be very careful about prejudging what went on here. But I think what we should be careful about is that the process is followed properly and that there's robust scrutiny of this. So what I would like to see is the report published so that we can all take a look at exactly what Adam Tolley KC has found out and what his report contains, to see the information that Rishi Sunak is making that decision on, and then we can come to some kind of conclusion on whether we agree with him. What I would say is that if this is a report that says there's nothing to see here, there's no problem, then why is it taking him so long to say that publicly? Carol is right that Dominic Raab said that if it was found that he had been bullying people, that he would resign. He has not resigned. So it's clear that he is of the view that the report is not career-ending for him and he can retain his position. And I guess the question that we're waiting for the answer to is, does Rishi Sunak take the same view and say so?
Yes, that is the issue. Just to say, to bring us to the eye in that point on the fact that they're reporting that Dominic Raab is refusing to resign. The report the Prime Minister is reading through this evening, we presume, through the night, but the fact that there hasn't been a clear-cut decision suggests that it is more nuanced, and there perhaps is more to the report that needs to be looked at.
But yes, and I think that's it. And I think David just said before, the process has to be followed properly. Of course it does. That's why the Prime Minister is reading this report again and very closely overnight. He's not going to rush to a decision. He wants Dominic Raab to stay in government. Of course he does. He's an ally of his. But what David has just said before, he said, these people are robust people and they don't, they're not they're not easily offended or upset. I mean, that's all very well, but we're talking about a civil service that is blatantly partisan, a civil service that hates the Tories and has shown its hatred of the Tories in all sorts of ways.
On what evidence are you basing that rather extreme claim, Carol?
You're saying they're robust people. It's not robust if someone says to you, someone hard stares at you, and you think that's bullying. This is a guy who wants a job done, and if people in his department aren't doing it properly, he has a right to tell them that.
Can you just answer that point that David raised? On what evidence are you basing the fact that the civil service hate the Tories?
Hate the Tories because the civil service prides itself in impartiality, Carol. So
well, they might pride themselves. Oh, let's talk about Sue Gray then, should we? They really pride themselves on impartiality. But we know what they have done. They try to thwart processes to do with Brexit and all the things that they disagree with, to do with immigration. Well, David, you read the papers as well as I do. You know what's been happening. So don't pretend that they're not partisan.
And I haven't come to the conclusion that all the civil service hate the Tories and that this is a plot to stitch them up. That is the conclusion I've came to, so I'm just wondering why you have.
We're reading different publications then. We're reading different stuff. Because from what I say, the civil service want to thwart the government at almost every turn. And this will be, they're saying today, if Rishi doesn't sack Rob, lots of them are going to resign. I mean, it's not for them to say what the Prime Minister is to do. The process says the Prime Minister has the final word. It's not for them to try and push his hand and say, if you don't, we're going to resign. Well, let them resign.
Let's move on to the Metro and something that David mentioned before, and it's the decision-making process. Now, I'm not sure whether we will actually get to see the report, but that is going to be quite crucial, isn't it, on what he bases the decision?
My understanding is they've made a pledge that we will see it. I don't understand why we haven't seen it already, why it's a secret up until Rishi Sunak has decided what he thinks of it. That seems a bit strange to me. I do think that this, and without judging this particular circumstance, this particular case, or what the outcome of it is, it does seem to me that it does show again that this process is flawed, that the ultimate adjudicator of whether Rishi Sunak's ministers have been bullying the civil service is Rishi Sunak. I don't like that, and it's not just about this government. It's been the process. Well, certainly it's the existing process, regardless of political persuasion, and it's the same process largely that's followed in Scotland as well. So it's not a party political point, but it seems to me that there's something unfair about it, and it could do with being looked at.
But David, are you suggesting that the public should see it and decide, and then Rishi should make his decision on the basis of that? The public shouldn't see it before the Prime Minister has seen it, looked at it and studied it. Surely you're not suggesting we should. It should be made public at some point.
I'm certainly not saying that the public should see it before the Prime Minister, but I'm
you're
not
saying
quite
at the same time.
Points of delay here.
It sounds like you're saying they should be seeing it at the same time.
Just very, very quickly before we go to the break, Carol, I just wanted to find out whether you think that these claims of bullying by the civil servants, whether they shouldn't be investigated at all.
No, of course they should be investigated. Of course they should. But like I said before, when the Guardian ran the story, when various of the newspapers ran the story, they didn't name a single source for these stories. Now, when I say unnamed sources on a story, I don't necessarily believe that story to be true. If you have the courage of your convictions, and if Dominic Raab bullied you, why not say so instead of briefing anonymously?
Sometimes there's a good reason to remain anonymous, though, if you fear reprisals. But on that note, we will leave it there, Carol. Let's take a look at the Metro and the big SpaceX problem. Well, the headline says, Elon, we have a problem. What did you make of the launch, David? Did you see it?
I watched some of it back afterwards. I think there's something quite interesting about it in that if you're looking at that Metro front page, you would think that this has been a disaster. And the phrase "a rapid, unscheduled disassembly," which is how they described it, certainly suggests that there is a problem. But actually, Elon Musk and SpaceX, their perspective on this is that they were doing this to learn, that they have learned a lot from it, and they believe they're still on target. And having read around it a bit this evening, it does seem that most of the experts seem to be saying that this actually has been successful in doing what they were trying to do, that they understood that they were going to lose this vessel and that there could be problems, and that they still are on schedule to make big strides in space exploration from this. I think, given it's Elon Musk, given his recent public persona, that there's perhaps a reluctance from the media to give him credit where it's due, and that they're hoping for a disaster, especially because today he's taken their blue ticks away from all the journalists on Twitter.
Yeah.
So perhaps there's something there in their desire to put him down. But I am certainly no rocket scientist, which that is pretty obvious. But it does seem, from reading around some of the people who are rocket scientists and understand the science behind this, that it is actually quite an impressive feat. And it does still look like this Starship is on course ultimately to revolutionise space travel.
Yeah, certainly those in the know are saying that it is a positive, and SpaceX was saying just to get off the launching pad would have been a success, Carol.
Really?
Yeah.
But it was supposed to orbit the Earth.
It was.
I mean, it was designed to go to Mars, but today it was supposed to orbit the Earth once before it crashed into the Pacific. It didn't get to
Correct.
New Mexico from Texas. So
Correct. But did you see them cheering when it actually exploded?
I did. No, I did. And I couldn't quite understand when they were cracking open the champagne and shouting, "Go Starship," after the explosion. I didn't quite get that. I was a bit like David. I thought, what's gone on? But I mean, Musk will try and talk it up and say this was a success in a sort. But it was supposed to orbit the Earth once, at least, and it didn't. And it crashed and exploded after, I can't remember how many seconds. You guys have been running the story all night. But it crashed after a few seconds. But the thing, what I didn't realise about this rocket is it's the biggest rocket ever built. It's taller than a 40-storey building, which is incredible. And it's got 17 million pounds of thrust, which is more than those Saturn V rockets that used to take the astronauts up into space and to the moon. So I just think it's, I don't believe what Elon Musk says is a huge success. I can't imagine spend billions of dollars.
In his defence, others have agreed. David, I just wonder if you can take us out on our goodbye to Paul O'Grady, front page of The Mirror, his funeral today.
Yeah, this is Paul O'Grady's funeral today, which was a very poignant, but also, I think, quite fittingly joyful occasion as well. It was full of dogs. There was a lot of animals. There was a lot of love. It seemed very poignant, and there's some actually lovely coverage across the newspapers about it today. The Sun have perhaps done it most powerfully in their tabloid fashion with for the love of Paul and the pictures of those dogs there. But I think he was obviously someone who was greatly loved, greatly admired, a fixture of daytime TV for so long.
We've run out of time. But David and Carol, thank you both for taking us through the papers.